Have you ever wondered why so many older adults slowly pick up habits that push people away without even noticing it? Have you noticed how these small shifts creep in quietly, often disguised as just the way I am? And most importantly, have you ever thought about how these patterns can silently shape your relationships, your influence, and even the way you see yourself? The truth is, as people age, many begin to develop behaviors that aren't flattering, and most of the time, they don't even realize it's happening. It doesn't show up overnight. It sneaks in little by little, until one day it starts to affect the way others treat you and how connected you feel. In today's video, we're revealing 9 of the most common ugly behaviors that people fall into more often as they grow older. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about feeling guilty or ashamed. It's about recognizing what's happening, pausing for a moment, and making choices that keep your relationships strong and your presence respected. These behaviors aren't always loud or obvious. They can be hidden inside daily routines, wrapped in habits, or brushed off with the excuse, "That's just who I am." But if they're left unchecked, they can slowly chip away at trust, dim the light of your influence, and ironically leave you feeling more lonely, right in the years of life that should be filled with closeness, joy, and meaningful connection. That's why you'll want to stay with me until the end of this list, because what you hear might challenge the way you see yourself, but it can also give you powerful tools to change how others see you. Even the smallest shift in behavior can spark surprising changes in how people respond to you and, even more importantly, in how you view your own worth and role at this stage of life. So let's dive in and uncover these hidden behaviors together. Number 1. A growing tendency to dwell on the negative. One of the most common patterns that sneaks in quietly with age is the habit of focusing more on what's wrong than what's right. It often begins so subtly you hardly notice it. Maybe a few extra complaints about the weather, the rising prices at the store, or how things were better back then. At first, it seems harmless, but as time passes, this negativity can color the way others see you and even reshape the overall tone of your presence. The sad reality is that many people don't realize it's happening. When your words lean more toward criticism than encouragement, others begin to connect your voice with heaviness, with gloom. Not because you mean any harm or lack kindness, but because the emotional atmosphere you create starts to feel suffocating. And here lies the irony. Older adults carry a wealth of wisdom, perspective, and insight to offer. Yet that wisdom often gets buried beneath a cloud of constant complaints, making it harder for others to hear the richness of your experience. It's important to remember that this habit doesn't always come from bitterness. More often, it grows out of disappointment, grief, or a quiet sense of being left behind. You may be mourning lost energy, missed opportunities, fading friendships, or the clarity you once had. These emotions are real and deeply valid. But when they slip out through constant criticism, sarcasm, or frequent complaints, they set the tone for your interactions in ways you might not intend. Over time, this default way of speaking can unintentionally push people away. Picture this. You sit down at a family dinner, and the first thing you say is how the food doesn't taste like it used to, or how the music is too loud. In that moment, the energy in the room changes. Instead of warmth, inspiration, or comfort, the people around you feel a heaviness. And if that happens repeatedly, loved ones may start to pull back, not because they don't care about you, but simply to shield themselves from the draining atmosphere. What makes this behavior so damaging isn't the intention behind it, but the impact it leaves. The unspoken message becomes, life is filled with more to complain about than to appreciate. And when that message is repeated again and again, it doesn't just affect your relationships. It shapes your mood, influences how others treat you, and can even weigh on your health. As we grow older, the brain becomes even more sensitive to repeated emotional states. That means when negativity shows up again and again, even in casual comments, it creates a mental loop that begins to shape everything else. And here's the difficult truth. The more time you spend focused on what's wrong, the less space there is for people to bring in what's right. Slowly, they stop feeling safe, welcome, or even excited to spend time with you. But this isn't about pretending everything is perfect or forcing a fake smile. It's about remembering that gratitude, warmth, and lightness don't fade with age. They're always available, always a choice, and at this stage of life, they matter more than ever before. Number 2, interrupting or dominating conversations without realizing it. As people get older, they carry decades of stories, lessons, and perspectives. That's a beautiful gift, until it spills out in ways that unintentionally silence others. One of the most common shifts with age is the tendency to interrupt, to talk over someone, or to take control of the conversation. It's rarely done out of disrespect. More often, it comes from genuine eagerness to share, or the belief that your experience is more valuable than the sentence being spoken. The challenge is this: when interrupting becomes a pattern, it doesn't sound wise. It sounds dismissive. People start to feel like their words don't matter, or worse, that they're being corrected rather than understood. That dynamic can quietly push others away, especially younger people who are still trying to shape their own identity and voice. It often begins from a place of passion. You hear someone bring up a subject you've lived through, and without thinking, you jump in. "Oh, I know exactly what you mean," and then launch into your own version of the story. To you, it feels like connection, but to the other person, it feels like their perspective just got erased. Imagine this with your own adult children. They're discussing how they're raising their kids, and before they can finish their thought, you cut in with how things were done in your day. You may believe you're helping, but in that moment, they may feel dismissed or unheard. And when that happens repeatedly, the emotional gap grows wider, turning what could have been a bonding moment into a quiet wall of distance. And before the other person has even finished their thought, you step in with advice or judgment. Even if your words are completely accurate, the way they're delivered, through interruption instead of invitation, can make them feel as though they're being corrected rather than supported. It's not about silencing your own voice or tiptoeing around conversations. What really matters is learning to pause, to truly listen, and to wait until the other person is done speaking before you respond. That small but powerful shift from simply talking to actually connecting can transform the way people receive you. There's a quiet strength in allowing someone else to finish first. It signals respect, patience, and the kind of maturity that no longer needs to constantly prove itself. Ironically, this approach often has the opposite effect of what people fear. Instead of others bracing themselves against your words, they begin asking for your input. They welcome your perspective because they feel heard and valued first. And it's important to remember, conversations are not competitions. They are invitations, opportunities to see and understand one another more deeply. When you give someone the gift of space to fully express their thoughts, you're offering something far more valuable than advice. You're offering validation. If you're still here watching and finding these reflections meaningful, type number 2 in the comments so I know you're following along. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I'd encourage you to do that now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Your support truly helps us continue creating content designed to inform, uplift, and inspire. Now, let's continue. Number 3, speaking harsh truths without considering timing or tone. There's a common belief that as we age, we've earned the right to say whatever we want, however we want. And while there is a certain freedom that comes with age and experience, that freedom can also carry a cost. Because when blunt honesty turns into disregard, it can damage rather than deepen relationships. One of the behaviors that tends to increase over time is saying things in the harshest way possible, even when they don't need to be said at all, or when they could be expressed with greater care and thoughtfulness. You may believe you're just being honest, or that you're doing someone a favor by pointing out the truth. But to the person on the receiving end, those words can land as sharp, dismissive, or even deeply hurtful, especially when the subject is something personal, like their appearance, their career choices, their relationships, or the way they live their life. Over time, This kind of unchecked bluntness doesn't build closeness. It creates distance, even with people who care for you deeply. It often sounds like this: "You've gained weight. That haircut doesn't suit you. That idea will never work." The intention might not be unkind, yet when honesty is delivered without gentleness, it loses its true value. Instead of being received as helpful guidance, it gets filtered as criticism. Somewhere along the way, many older adults convince themselves that the younger generation is simply too sensitive. But what if the real issue isn't their sensitivity? It's the way the message is delivered? Think about it. If people repeatedly react poorly to what you say, maybe the problem isn't the truth itself, but the method of delivery. Tone matters, timing matters, and above all, intent must be wrapped in compassion if it's going to be heard and respected. Consider the people you admire most in your own life. Chances are, it wasn't just the content of their words that made an impact on you. It was the way they spoke. Their words carried weight not because they were harsh, but because they were expressed with care, with patience, and with a sense of humanity. That's the real strength, knowing when to hold back, and even more importantly, knowing how to deliver honesty when the moment calls for it. It's not about silence. It's about being thoughtful, strategic, and kind. At the end of the day, people won't remember every opinion you shared. They won't hold on to every blunt truth you spoke. But what they will remember, what stays with them far longer than any statement, is how you made them feel. Did your words lift them up, or did they leave them feeling judged? That emotional imprint lasts longer than the truth itself ever could. Number 4, becoming increasingly judgmental about other people's lifestyles. As the years pass, it's surprisingly easy to slip into the habit of judging others, especially when their choices look nothing like the ones we would have made ourselves. Maybe it's how someone dresses, the way they speak, who they choose to marry, or even what they believe in. With age, that inner voice of judgment can grow louder, often without us realizing it. This behavior rarely comes from a place of malice. More often, it's rooted in the desire to protect the values that carried us through life. These are the principles that helped us endure hard times, raise families, and build lives we are proud of. But here's the challenge: the world keeps changing, and when we treat every new idea or unfamiliar lifestyle as wrong instead of simply different, we risk becoming emotionally rigid. That rigidity can slowly build walls between us and the very people we want to stay close to. You might catch yourself saying things like, "Back in my day, we never would have done that," or "Young people just don't understand respect anymore." While those words may feel true to you, they often send a very different message to others: that you're unwilling to adapt, unwilling to listen, or unwilling to let them grow into their own choices and identity. Take this example. A 65-year-old man named Walter reacted strongly when his daughter told him she had become a vegetarian. Without thinking, he said, "That's ridiculous. You need meat to be healthy." He didn't intend to hurt her. He thought he was simply protecting what he believed to be true. But his daughter walked away feeling dismissed, unheard, and frustrated. What could have been a warm, supportive conversation ended instead with distance and disappointment, all because his worldview couldn't bend enough to make space for hers. The truth is, people are not problems waiting to be solved. They are human beings longing to be understood. And every time we choose judgment instead of curiosity, we lose the chance to really see the person in front of us. You don't need to agree with everything they do or believe, but simply asking yourself, why do they see it this way? Instead of rushing to condemn, can transform the tone of your relationships. That small shift opens the door to mutual respect and, often, surprising moments of connection. Judgment has a way of shrinking your world, narrowing your circle, limiting conversations, and closing doors. Curiosity, on the other hand, expands it. And at this stage of life, the last thing we need is a smaller world or more walls between us and the people we love most. If you're still here watching and finding these reflections meaningful, please type number 4 in the comments so I know you're following along. And if you haven't yet subscribed, now is the perfect time. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future videos. Your support helps us continue creating thoughtful content designed to both inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 5. Refusing help even when you need it. One of the most stubborn habits that creeps in with age, often without us realizing it, is the refusal to accept help. At first, it feels subtle. You might brush off someone's offer to carry a heavy bag, fix something around the house, or give you a ride. On the surface, it can even sound noble, a sign of independence. But over time, this resistance becomes isolating. We grew up believing that strength meant doing everything ourselves, that needing help somehow made us weaker, less capable, or even less respected. But here's the reality. As we get older, the definition of real strength begins to change. It's no longer about how much weight you can lift or how far you can drive. True strength lies in your ability to adapt, to accept acts of love, and to let others in. Because when you consistently push away help, what you're really doing, though you may not intend it, is pushing away connection. By refusing help, what you're really saying is, I don't want to need you. But here's the thing. The people in your life are saying, I want to be needed. Whether it's your children, your neighbors, or your friends, their offers of help don't come from pity. They come from love and care. I once knew an 82-year-old man named Harold who lived alone after his wife passed away. His son would call often, offering to come by, run errands, or even cook a meal. But Harold's answer was always the same. No need, I'm fine. The truth was, he wasn't fine. He simply didn't want to feel like a burden. What he didn't realize, though, was that his constant refusals left his son feeling helpless and unneeded. Slowly, a quiet distance grew between them. Allowing others to help doesn't make you weak or dependent. It makes you human. It gives others the priceless gift of giving. It deepens trust and serves as a reminder, both to them and to you, that you still matter. Not just for what you can do, but for who you are. And here's the irony. Many older adults absolutely love helping others. They light up when they get the chance to share wisdom, lend advice, or lend a hand. But they often forget that younger generations feel exactly the same way. When you accept help, you're not only receiving, you're also giving. You're giving others the chance to love you in a tangible, meaningful way. So, the next time someone says, let me help you with that, don't see it as weakness. See it as connection. See it as a quiet act of love. Because aging well doesn't mean carrying every burden alone. It means knowing when to lean and allowing that leaning to bring people closer, not push them away. Number 6, talking more than listening in conversations. There's a subtle shift that often comes with age, especially when you've lived a long and full life. You've collected stories, lessons, and decades of hard-earned wisdom. So when conversations start, it's easy to slip into telling mode. Without even realizing it, you may stop listening and start broadcasting. At first, talking more than listening can feel like real connection. You believe you're being generous by sharing your experiences, offering stories and lessons you've gathered through the years. But over time, if you are always the one speaking, the people around you may begin to feel invisible. Younger folks, who might already hesitate to share their voices, may quietly withdraw. They start to sense that your stories take up all the space, leaving little room for theirs. And it isn't only about generational gaps. Even among close friends, siblings, or lifelong partners, imbalance appears when one person dominates a conversation. True listening is not just staying quiet while the other person speaks. It is an active decision to create space for their world, even when yours feels so full. When you interrupt, finish someone's sentence, or redirect the talk back to your own experience, the subtle message becomes, what I have to say is more important. This usually doesn't come from arrogance. It's often just habit. After all, you've lived longer, seen more, endured more. But when that habit becomes the default, something precious is lost. The gift of a fresh perspective. Take Janice, for example, a 74-year-old grandmother. When her granddaughter confided in her about a recent breakup, Janice responded each time with her own stories: how dating was in her time, what men were like back then, and how she coped with heartbreak. Her words came from love, but they missed the mark. What her granddaughter truly needed was presence, not a lecture. Listening, in its truest form, is one of the most powerful acts of respect. It says, "You matter enough for me to set my own thoughts aside right now." It creates safety, comfort, and trust. It's humbling, too, because it reminds us that no matter how much we've lived, there's always more to learn about others and even about ourselves. This doesn't mean you have to stop sharing your stories. They are valuable, they are needed, and they carry meaning. But balance matters. Ask more questions. Leave longer pauses before you respond. Pay attention. Does the other person still look engaged, or are they quietly slipping away? Because when you genuinely listen, something beautiful unfolds. People begin to open up, they relax, they trust, and they lean in closer. In that space, real connection forms, not just between two voices, but between two hearts. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights meaningful, please type number 6 in the comments so I know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so now and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Your support truly helps us continue creating content that informs, inspires, and uplifts. Number 7. Making negative generalizations about younger generations. As we age, one of the easiest traps to fall into is forming sweeping judgments about young people these days. It usually starts small, with a few observations. Maybe someone forgets to hold the door open, or you notice them glued to their phone during dinner. Before long, those small frustrations grow into big statements, and suddenly, an entire generation gets labeled as lazy, disrespectful, or selfish. But here's the truth. Those generalizations aren't only unfair, they also rob you of opportunities to build deeper relationships and experience fresh perspectives that could genuinely enrich your own life. And let's be honest, this isn't new. Every generation throughout history has looked at the one coming after it with a critical eye. In the 1950s, people complained that teenagers were unruly and wild. In the 1980s, elders grumbled that kids didn't know how to work hard anymore. Now, many older adults look at today's younger generation and repeat the same refrain, but the reality is each generation grows up in a completely different world, with different pressures, tools, and values. They may not write thank you notes like you once did, but they might be sending donations online to people they've never even met. They may not stay in the same job for 40 years, but many are balancing 3 careers while also caring for aging parents and raising children of their own. If all they hear from you is, "back in my day," or "your generation just doesn't get it," they'll tune out. Not because they don't care, but because they feel unseen, unfairly judged before they've even had a chance to show you who they are. I remember a man named George, 79, who once told me his grandson was soft, simply because he talked openly about going to therapy. George used to say, "In my time, we just dealt with things." But over time, he began to see something new. His grandson's openness about mental health wasn't weakness at all. It was a kind of strength. Speaking honestly about his struggles took courage, not fragility. That shift in perspective didn't just change how George saw his grandson. It opened the door to genuine connection, long talks filled with laughter, sharing music, and even taking a weekend trip together, something George never thought would happen. The truth is this: when you assume the worst about an entire generation, you stop seeing people as individuals. And when that happens, you miss the chance to learn, to grow, and to build meaningful bonds across age, across values, and across worlds. Instead of rushing to judgment, try asking questions. Replace criticism with curiosity. Because when you do, you don't just avoid sounding bitter. You actually create space for understanding. Curiosity builds bridges where judgment builds walls. And while younger generations don't necessarily need your approval, they absolutely value your wisdom. but they are far more likely to seek it when they feel respected rather than ridiculed. And here's the twist. The more you connect with younger people, the more alive you feel. Their energy, creativity, and dreams have a way of reawakening parts of you that may have been quiet for years. But that can only happen if you stop labeling and start truly listening. Number 8. Interrupting or dismissing others during conversations. As we grow older, we naturally carry a wealth of stories, lessons, and hard-earned opinions gathered over decades. That's something to be proud of. But it can also lead to one surprisingly off-putting habit: the tendency to cut people off mid-sentence or dismiss what they're saying altogether. It's rarely meant as rudeness. More often, it comes from excitement, eagerness to help, or the belief that you've been there, done that, and already know where the conversation is going. The problem is, when you interrupt someone, especially someone younger, it sends an unspoken message. What I have to say matters more than what you're saying. Over time, this seemingly small habit of interrupting or dismissing others begins to chip away at trust, intimacy, and mutual respect. People may not stop caring for you, but they start to hold back. They share less, not because they don't want to, but because they quietly feel unheard. And when that happens, a subtle distance grows, even between you and the people who love you most. I once knew a woman named Helen, age 72, who had 3 adult daughters. Whenever they came to visit, Helen would jump in to finish their sentences or offer advice before they had even finished asking a question. At first, it seemed harmless. But over time, her daughters' visits grew shorter, and their calls became less frequent. Finally, one day, her eldest daughter said gently, "Mom, we love you, but sometimes it feels like there's no space for our voice." Those words broke Helen's heart, but they also opened her eyes. She began to notice how often she chimed in too quickly. So, she made a conscious effort to try something new. She paused. She listened. She waited before responding. And slowly, the conversations came back to life. Listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about being present. It's about creating space where someone can express themselves without fear of being cut off, corrected, or overshadowed. And here's the beautiful part. When you truly listen, you begin to hear things you might have otherwise missed. A quiet pain someone has been carrying, a small joy they hadn't shared before, a hidden dream they're almost afraid to speak out loud. By listening fully, you send a powerful message. You matter. Your thoughts matter. I want to know who you are right now, not just who you used to be or who I think you should be. Especially after 70, people may not always expect us to listen. But when we do, when we give our attention instead of rushing to give an opinion, it surprises them and it draws them closer. And that is rare in today's world. In a time that moves fast and speaks loud, offering someone the gift of being fully heard is one of the most healing, powerful acts of love we can give. It doesn't cost a thing, yet it creates connection, trust, and closeness that no amount of money could ever buy. Number 9. Assuming you already know everything. One of the quiet habits that creeps in with age is the subtle belief that we've already seen it all, heard it all, and learned everything we needed to know. On the surface, this seems harmless. After all, experience is invaluable. But when that belief hardens into the idea that we already have all the answers, it becomes one of the most unattractive behaviors we can carry without realizing it. It often shows up in small, everyday moments. Dismissing new ideas simply because they don't match what we learned decades ago. Rolling our eyes at unfamiliar lifestyles or modern technology. Refusing to ask questions or seek help because we don't want to look unsure. But here's the truth. The moment we stop being curious is the moment we start aging faster on the inside than we do on the outside. Curiosity is what keeps us youthful. It doesn't mean pretending to be someone we're not. It means choosing to remain mentally and emotionally open, even when the world around us feels foreign or confusing. I once met a man named Paul, 78, who carried a quiet kind of humility. When smartphones became common, he didn't complain or resist. Instead, he turned to his grandson and said, Teach me how to use this. I want to understand how your world works. That simple request built a bridge between two generations. His grandson didn't just show him how to use the phone. He started calling more often, visiting more, and spending real time together, all because Paul stayed open. Now, compare that with someone who constantly says, "That's stupid," or "back in my day." Not only does that attitude close the door to learning, it also pushes people away. When we act as if we've already seen it all, people eventually stop trying to share new things with us. Instead of being remembered for wisdom, we become known for resistance, and that resistance isolates us far more than age ever could. But here's what's truly powerful. Wisdom and curiosity are not opposites. In fact, some of the wisest people I've ever known were the ones who said things like, "Tell me more," or "I hadn't thought of it that way," or simply, "That's interesting. Why do you think that?" These are the kinds of people others naturally gravitate toward, not because they had all the answers, but because they never stopped learning. So the next time you feel yourself becoming irritated by change or dismissive of a new idea, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, am I reacting out of habit, or am I choosing to stay open to growth? Being older doesn't mean we stop evolving. In fact, the people who age most gracefully, the ones others love to spend time with, are those who remain students of life, even into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. When we choose curiosity over certainty, we send a powerful message to both ourselves and the world. I'm still alive inside. I'm still growing. I'm still becoming. And truthfully, there's nothing more attractive, magnetic, and life-giving than that. As we close this video, I invite you to take a quiet moment and reflect on the 9 behaviors we just explored. Which one surprised you? Which one felt a little too familiar, maybe even uncomfortably so? Remember, none of this is about pointing fingers or making anyone feel ashamed. It's about awareness, about shining a light on the small habits that can shape how others experience us and how we experience ourselves. The beauty of being in our 60s, 70s, or 80s is that we've earned the right to grow on our own terms. That means we can unlearn just as much as we've learned. We can choose to release old habits that no longer serve us and embrace new ways of living that bring us closer to the kind of life, love, and connection we truly desire. We all have the ability to pause, to reflect, and to decide which parts of ourselves we want to carry forward. The choice is always ours, to keep only the habits and attitudes that make us kinder, more open, and more at peace. Maybe as you listen today, you recognize something in yourself. Perhaps you noticed a pattern you're ready to release, or maybe you discovered a new way of showing up that you'd like to practice in your daily life. If even one idea from this video left you feeling more aware, more encouraged, or more empowered, then the time we've shared together has been worth it. And remember, you are never walking this path alone. We are on this journey side by side, learning and growing together. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and share one thing you've taken from this video, along with how you plan to apply it in your own life. Your words matter, and reading your comments gives us strength, encouragement, and the motivation to keep creating. If you found this video meaningful, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with others who may also benefit. Your support is what allows us to continue producing content that not only informs, but also inspires. Wishing you good health, peace, and happiness always. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can keep walking this journey together.